What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at the match between Manchester City and Southampton in the English Premier League and how Southampton earned a point against Manchester City after a very convincing performance. Now, before we get into the tactics behind the match, check out both my books. They're online on Amazon and there's links in the description below. Also, be sure to check out Keyframe. It's the program I'm using to make this video, and there's a link to that in the description as well. Now, let's get right into the tactics of the match. Now, City went with a clear back four in their build-up phase, and they then went with an asymmetric diamond midfield shape with three more advanced players, with Rodri at the single pivot position. Then single width would be occupied by Phil Foden and Raheem Sterling. Now, interesting enough, Southampton go with their usual 4-2-2-2 formation with their wide midfielders advancing just a bit higher up the field and allowing their midfield to stagger quite well to then try and control the dangerous space between the lines. So now we can start to see right away some key patterns for Manchester City, and this occurred in the wide area starting from the half space. So a lot of times players like Bernardo Silva will either be the keys to getting on the ball and facilitating progression through their own movements and finding superiority between the lines, but oftentimes these players like Bernardo Silva and Kevin De Bruyne will be the main points for creating space for others, dragging themselves into wide area, manipulating the press of the wide midfielders and opening up the half space for progression, or overloading the wide area to simply progress around Southampton's mid block. So the narrow shape of the four midfielders often was able to recover well from this because of the four-man midfield and their access to the wide area. So oftentimes the cover shadow would block access to Bernardo Silva and allow the play to be forced into the wider area. But Manchester's shape did allow them to create 4 versus 2s going forward into Bernardo Silva. So with a central defender at the base, we then have the holding midfielder and the fullback playing in a more narrow role, allowing the winger to occupy the width, and now Bernardo Silva is the third line pass. So then we can isolate the near side forward and the near side wide midfielder to then create our 4v2 and try and get Bernardo Silva on the ball again using numerical superiority. Now, to highlight the shape of Southampton again, we have a staircase midfielder with the weak side holding midfielder being the natural number 6 controlling the space between the line on a different horizontal and vertical line of James Ward-Prowse, who's jumping a little bit further as the ball near holding midfielder, and now the wide midfielder who remains narrow to block off entry passes into the wide area and cut off the inside advanced midfielder of Bernardo Silva using his cover shadow while still having access to the ball. Now we can see the narrow shape of Manchester City in their back four, and especially João Cancelo positioning himself to then create an overload in the half space with a player like Kevin De Bruyne coming more narrow in this left-hand half space, allowing him to work with Cancelo to then go higher up the field or fan out into the wide area. And we have Rodri holding our central corridor at the base of the four-man midfield. Now we start to see Bernardo Silva moving into the wide area, manipulating the cover shadow of the wide midfielder of Southampton, allowing passes to open up into the number 10, Jack Grealish, coming off of the central defenders, allowing Kevin De Bruyne to then move inward to try and pin defenders and allowing superiority to occur via Jack Grealish. And if the midfielders overcompensated and blocked this passing angle, they would always have Bernardo Silva to then progress around the opposing team's block. Now we have the same situation but on the opposite side. So it's not just Bernardo Silva moving into a wider position to open up space for the number 10. Now it's Kevin De Bruyne fanning into the wide area, and just by doing this, Kevin De Bruyne is able to take away the midfielder of Southampton and open up a pass into the number 10. So as we see Kevin De Bruyne's body shape positioning himself to then move into the wide area, and then we'll see a curved press forcing the player inward away from Kevin De Bruyne, able to then easily exploit the number 10 of Manchester City. And that's why for Southampton it was so important for their holding midfielder on the weak side to position himself deeper so he can get across and maintain access to a player in the number 10 position for Manchester City. Now we'll have a very clear look at the Manchester City shape. Now both fullbacks occupying the half spaces, Rodri at the base of a four-man midfield that becomes very narrow now, and the flexibility from these three midfielders and their potential to go narrow or fan out into wider areas gives more freedom for players occupying the dual width and a player like Cancelo to come more narrow, or Phil Foden to stay wider, or vice versa. So it offers a lot of flexibility in their shape and how they'll look to break down the 4-4-2 of Southampton, as we see here with the staggering and stepping of midfielders to then try and use access and cover shadows to block the space between the lines. So now when Southampton were on the ball, their center defenders were typically split by their goalkeeper, and Manchester City pressed in a very aggressive man-oriented way. So often Jack Grealish and Kevin De Bruyne would jump on central defenders, look to create access to the goalkeeper, and then in their 4-4-2 defensive structure, or 4-3-1-2, or any variation of these structures with one of the central midfielders jumping to their holding midfielder of Southampton, who is then supported by his deeper midfield players like Sterling, Rodri, and Phil Foden on the weak side, preparing for second ball while they support press, because Southampton did play very direct in their build-up phase. Now, a common pattern for Southampton when they did access the midfielders and in the midfield third is when James Ward-Prowse or Romeu would drop into one of the half spaces, creating a three-man build-up and allowing then a single pivot to be formed to then release the fullbacks into the wider area, creating width and allowing the wide midfielders to partner up with one of the central forwards and allowing them to overload the half space. So this gave Manchester City a lot to think about and often even changed their shape from a back four to a back five, still going with two holding midfielders, but now we go with a front three in a 5-2-3. Now this was just situational and only occurred at times, but it was important to note that Southampton did at times force Manchester City to change, so then Manchester City would reestablish control off the ball. And that's where we're going to wrap up the analysis. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.